You're listening to Shoe In, covering the ins and outs of all things footwear, from sneakers to heels, loafers to slippers, and every type of shoe in between. Brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. And now your footwear insiders, Matt Priest and Andy Polk.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Shoe In Show. This is Shoe Radio, the Footwear Industries podcast. We've been doing a lot of series on COVID and the impact on the industry, and we've tried to remain very optimistic and upbeat, and trying to explore a lot of changes. But the sea changes keep happening, and this show really is a new optimistic outlook for how our industry is changing in regards to trade shows, associations that support our industry and bring people together. So Matt, tee it up from here and talk a little bit about why this episode is really exciting for us.
Yeah, absolutely, Andy. Our guest today is someone who's been on the show before. He's actually been on both the real-time show and as well as one of the kind of the
small time
shorts.
Shows.
Yeah, small time shows.
The small time shows where he belongs.
No, that's
short clips for a tall man.
Exactly. Well, John Heron is the executive director of the Fashion Footwear Association of New York, and he is joining us again on Shoe and Show. And John, it's great to have you in our virtual studio for our discussion today. And there's much to talk about as you and I talk on almost daily basis at this point. But we have two things we want to handle with your expertise. One is how you view the future of trade shows as it sits right now, knowing that we may not have all the data in front of us that we need to make wise decisions. And secondly, we announced this week, this being middle of June 2020, we announced this week that FDRA and FFANY are moving towards an acquisition technically, but of joining of forces more practically. And so the FFANY family and brands will come in under the FDRA umbrella. So I'm super excited about that. But we have much to talk about in this episode. So I want to welcome you back to Shoe and Show.
Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. And I think it goes without saying, I think I might be more excited than you guys are about the future of our merger together and what it's going to mean for the industry, what it's going to mean for a united front to help the industry come together and move into the future. So I'm excited to talk with you today.
Awesome. Well, let's get right to it. One of the things that I think as you look across the landscape of the different trade shows, and trade shows play such an important role in the industry, buyers and sellers coming together in person at various times of the year. We are a relational industry. We're a familial industry. And I think it's so important that we come together. But as you look across the landscape, FFANY is well positioned from the standpoint that it is made up predominantly of permanent showroom space and members within New York City. And so that is space that's been invested in. It's used throughout the year, not just for the 4 market weeks. But as you sit here in the middle of June 2020, John, how are you thinking about just the overall tenor of the discussion around the future of trade shows, and how much of what we're doing now in the digital space will be permanent, and how much will we revert back to kind of normal operating procedure going forward?
Yeah, well, look, the short-term answer is there's nothing absolute. My phone rings off the hook about people wanting to know, what's the absolute answer? Is August going to happen? Is what's going to happen in December? And you don't really, nothing is certain at this stage in terms of the machination of what's going to happen in the future, in the short-term future. Just because, obviously, as things open, as things get delayed, as protocols gets put in place and changed, the answers that we have today are going to dramatically change in tomorrow, and especially in 2 weeks and a month. So I think the need to stay flexible and to stay understanding of the fact that this is a moving ball for everybody in the trade shows. I'm on the phone with Laura in Atlanta, and I've spoken with Belinda with MECOM, and again, we're kind of all in it together of an unknown of what things are going to be like. From a long-term perspective, absolutely what's going on right now is going to change the protocols going forward. People are being effective showing their lines on Zoom or on Microsoft Teams, or really how, generally speaking, how the retailers dictate that you want a new way of showing samples and showing their lines, i.e. having a video conference, sending samples out, going through merchandising sessions, remotely. And that's going to impact things, because now that we've done that and people have been successful with it, successful in terms of the communication, we don't know there could be, it would be really interesting to see the shoes that get delivered and the shoes that get chosen, because there is not going to be that personal interaction where designers and sales leads are working with merchandisers and planners and buyers hand in hand to sort of put together what a line is in a given retailer. But the tools that people are employing now, aspects of that are absolutely going to make life more efficient and make life more normal, and probably end up in what was once viewed as essential meetings and essential travel being completely redefined.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's a lot yet to be determined. But, if you wind the clocks back, I actually signed my deal at FDRA at WUSA February 17th, 2009 at the H.H. Brown booth, which I know you're intimately familiar with. And at the time, WUSA was kind of at the peak of its glory, if you will, as it was serving the industry. And it seemed like a one-stop shop. The regionals have and still and were very important at the time. But we seem to have a national shoe show with WUSA in particular, with all the brands and all that's going on in each of the different product categories within the footwear industry. Are those days totally over? Has that ship entirely sailed with the fragmentation, the segmentation within the industry, with the digital tools that you just outlined? Or is there going to be another day at some point where we do find ourselves with a national show?
I think the days of, the short answer is yes. I think those days are over. Now, those days are over of how we once knew them. Yes, I fondly recall the days of walking into, whether it was the Sands or the Mandalay Bay, and seeing these, hundreds of thousands of dollars that these brands would spend on booths to create an experience. And I always likened it to playing a home game where you've got your buyer on your turf, and you can present your brand the way you can, that best suited to present your brand in an environment that's best suited for you to make the sale. But those booths that existed were so massive and expensive that as the economics of footwear changed, and quite frankly, there's more transparency in pricing, consumers were able to get better deals on good product through, whether it was department store sales or department store discounts, followed by the emergence of the open sale channel, and then finally the transparency that the internet brings. Margins were shrunk, and when margins get shrunk, expenses get looked at more carefully, and people started to iterate about, hey, what's the most effective way to sell our product? And most of the major companies said, hey, the best way that we want to sell our product on a consistent basis is to have these major buyers in our showrooms, where we can, again, replicate and present our brand in the way that's the most powerful for that brand. So I will change that answer in one way, in that there is a growing need for the industry to get together. And one thing that WUSA in its heyday really achieved was all of the decision makers from the top retailers and all of the decision makers from the top brands were in one place at one time. And that need is not going to go away, both for business purposes, but for sharing of ideas, being charitable, in our different enterprises that the footwear industry is so famous for, and so well, and has done such a good job of over the years with 210, with shoes on sale, with Souls for Souls. I mean, it's a very generous industry, and there is a need to get together. So we will get together again. It just won't be in the formats that we're familiar with or harken back to.
Yeah, and I'll jump in here too, and I'll echo that as well, because I think one of the biggest challenges that we have as an industry is so many times brands want to go it alone and they look at their backroom operations as something unique and special. But in actuality, brands typically design and develop and produce shoes the same way, sometimes in the same factories, most of the time using the same material suppliers. And what happens is when they go it alone, their costs increase versus trying to work together. And I think in this environment that we have, it's more important than ever to collaborate and work together as an industry on backroom operations that have nothing to do with trade secrets or don't have anything to do with marketplace competition. So if there's a way that we can all work together across brands in order to create greater compliance for our factories and ensure our workers and the factories are taken care of better, raise the level of chemical compliance for our consumers, raise the quality or durability of our product, ensure that our factories, through FDRA's waste program, are recycling their waste and becoming better stewards for the environment. All these things happen because we get together. And yeah, we can do our working group calls on Zoom, and it is effective, but there's a lot to be said when you're face to face with each other around a table, sharing challenges and sharing solutions together to help each other become a lot better. And also, not just on the business side, but on the trend side, it's super important that there's one kind of central location where people can walk the floor and look at trends to make sure that they're making the right product and succeeding in the marketplace, and hear what other people are talking about and share ideas around what consumers are doing and shifting and changing. All of that is possible because we have these trade shows. Without that, if you just had your own individual showroom and there wasn't a way to get together at FFANY or get together at other events, then you're basically making a lot of guesses. And yeah, you can work with some trend forecasting groups, but sometimes they only have a little small segment of what they're working on. And you can make huge misses if you don't have these synergies, and we become less of a robust industry by not having these things. In addition to the charity, as John so well pointed out. Matt, you were talking about WSA when you signed. What year was that?
That was 2009, and H.H. Brown had this palatial kind of vast booth that took up a multitude of square footage.
Right.
And I remember at the time, and they weren't their only ones. There were 2-story booths and going up different ladders to upper lofts. It was crazy.
So that was 2009. I did my first public speech for FDRA in 2013 at WSA. And I think David Kahn was running it then. And I, in essence, was a keynote at WSA, which is shocking in many ways, but especially being my first speech. It just goes to show you over a 4-year time from its zenith down to where it went, it precipitously kind of fell off a lot, because soon after that, WSA folded into FFANY Platform and Magic and all that. So these trade shows, they're super volatile when you take a look at it, right?
Yeah, from my standpoint, absolutely. I think, again, you iterated into platform, and FFANY Platform was, it was almost a need that you had to participate, and it was very, very effective for exactly what you said. The great thing that Leslie and Belinda did there was you could you could walk that floor and very easily see trends. And as things became more transparent, you could bop in booths. Where at WSA you had security guards at booths. If you remember that, you wouldn't be allowed in to see booths and to see trends. And I thought Platform did a great job of that, of walking the floor. Now, what Platform didn't have was the same level of top-to-top meeting capabilities, because they didn't have these booths. And as you said, Matt, the palatial H.H. Brown booth, it had an office, and you could go in and have a business meeting and talk about financials, talk about the future, and do deals and make partnerships with whether it was suppliers or retailers. But yeah, Andy, I'll echo what you said. I think a good example of what FDRA has done with the sourcing summit. When you're in that sourcing summit, it's not a bunch of people that are looked at as, hey, we're here competing. It's about how can we improve upon logistical facilities that are going to help all of us. And in a sense, that's what we've got to get back to from a trade show standpoint, is people are going to have their own vision of what their line represents and what they think product's going to be relevant in the future. But how can we all come together to do, to improve upon efficiencies and have these discussions about the direction that the industry is going at a serious level. And it's through trade shows, it's through industry gatherings that happens, whether it's executive summits, FFANY meetings, and I think they're important. And I think one of the things that our partnership hopefully will lead to is more clarity in that and developing the gotta attend events. You have to be at this, everybody who's a player in footwear needs to be in this location at this time so we can have those meetings and we can have those quality interactions.
Yeah. And I think the challenge for people right now around like virtual showrooms and everything they're doing right now is they're looking at the here and now and not looking at 6 months down the road where technology is going to be, right? So like Wayne Gretzky always said, they were like, why were you such a prolific goal scorer? And he said, I chased the puck where it was going, not where it was, right? So if you chase the value where it's going, you chase the technology, you can see in 6 months or a year from now where virtual is going to be really dynamic. And, I think if we look at the here and now, we've got platforms that weren't necessarily built out with a lot of money and funding because you didn't necessarily need to do a lot of virtual showcasing of shoes or products like we do now. But there's going to be a ton of money and investment thrown into platforms that are going to be super dynamic and really cool. So even if we have these events where we get back together, I think people really need to wrap their head around the fact that it's going to be very digitized, right? You need one sample, one color. And if the buyer wants to look at the color red, green, and yellow, then you pull up your iPad and you let them flip through it and they can have a 3D model they can flip and spin. And there's going to be a lot of interaction that way. And then all of a sudden you've got a data pack attached to it that they can just download directly to their email. So there's going to be a huge amount of efficiency. So the fear around what these trade shows will look like, it shouldn't be fearful to see the future because, as we just pointed out, WSA was at its height, and within 4 years, it kind of dropped off and got swallowed up. And if we're not helping the industry think these things through and understand technology and chase the puck forward and not where it is, then we're not doing our job as kind of leaders of our associations, helping support the industry think about what those things are. And sometimes it's not about having the solution, but simply pulling people along with ideas of saying, we need to get our heads wrapped around what the future is and stop thinking about the here and now and just trying to, do things the same way. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said.
Well, let me pivot away from that a little bit before we head into the partnership specifically, John. If you're an independent buyer, if you've got a couple stores in the Midwest and you're so used to hitting Vegas or coming to New York, the digitization thing, I think, is Andy's spot on as it relates to the broader industry at the much higher volumes, the big players, the big brands and retailers. But if you're an independent, how do you even navigate right now to ensure that you have product, you have relevant product in your store over the next 18 months? I just don't, I'm trying to figure out kind of what that independent buyer is thinking. What do you think from your perspective, John?
Yeah, it's been really tough on them. I mean, number one, they've had to absolutely shift how they operate, in terms of complying with state and local and national regulations about reopening and being safe. I know a lot of companies have unfortunately had to furlough their sales staff and to focus on essential businesses right now, essential elements of staying in business right now. And so they're not seeing visits from reps. I think, again, as I said, I spoke with Laura at the Atlanta show. They're planning to go forward in in August. And I know that's going right now. It's planned to be robustly attended because I think there's a demand. So in a sense, I think these regional gatherings, whether it's the Chicago show, the Atlanta show, I know as they start to go, that's a great avenue for independents to see product and touch product and feel product. And I know that independents are being reached out to by a lot of brands to have virtual presentations. Look, it's going to be really tough for the next 18 months to not only survive, but to change the conversation on how we're going to thrive, how we're going to get back to making money, how we're going to get back to running a business. I think trade shows, the regional trade shows are going to be very, very important. And as Andy said, not being afraid of the technology, not being afraid of making decisions based on digital images, digital tools that are now out there and so prevalent. And going with what in terms of these guys have been in business. They're independents that are in business in 2020 are there in business for a reason, and it's because they're good at what they do. And so they'll adapt, and the good ones will thrive.
That's a great point. And, it's incumbent upon the shows themselves, I think, particularly if they have a broad support of the independent segment of our industry to lure people back, right? And to make it well worth their time to come back and be engaged and to create those tools that are necessary for the independents to be successful. Let's talk about the partnership. This has been something that has been in the making for many years. Depending on who our chairman is and who's running FFANY at the time, we've come close. We've walked away. We've come back together. There's been ongoing conversations. From your mind, John, you've been in the job for 18 months now, and you've done a heck of a job. I think the industry across the board has recognized the work you put in to streamline FFANY and to make it effective and actually make the necessary decisions to make it sustainable in the long term. Kind of why is the moment now good from your perspective? And then I can weigh in kind of from our perspective, how we're viewing the transaction.
Yeah. Well, look, we've talked a lot about this. FFANY has been around since 1940, and it really started off with an idea of like-minded companies in New York City saying, hey, let's all get together and coordinate dates so when the buyers come into New York City, we're all ready for them with our new product lines. And it was exactly what we've kind of been talking about, this informal industry group that wanted to not only coordinate dates, but, make sure that they represented themselves as a group in New York. As that evolved and they were successful, a trade show business emerged. The original intent of FFANY wasn't to run trade shows; it was to align like-minded companies. And this trade show business resulted in it, where everyone was flocking to New York at the same times. People were investing in showrooms, and the golden years of FFANY, were the same, kind of aligned with the same golden years of WUSA, where you would have massive shows in showrooms. People would come and rent temporary space. People would be in the Hilton or the Warwick or the Javits Center. And it really was a huge enterprise. In the last 5 years, as consolidation engulfed our industry in terms of meaning that there was less buyers coming, and there was, with less buyers, there's less hours in the day and less brands they can see. So when brands used to have 20 appointments a day, it went down to 10, it went down to 5, and it wasn't as meaningful. FFANY didn't pivot quick enough to get out of the trade show business, and it had a rather large infrastructure built on running trade shows, which became financially, it became a pretty significant financial burden. And meanwhile, I've said this, very complimentary of you, Andy, Jasmine, Thomas, the whole team at FDRA. You guys have, at that same period of time, focused on building, opportunities for partnership, opportunities for content, opportunities for communication platforms like this, to benefit the industry, and really focusing on the future, or as Andy, as you said, where the puck's going, not where the puck's been. And it made a lot of sense. I mean, Matt, it makes a lot of sense because your organization, FFANY can slot into it with sharing all of the administrative burden of running an office and really come together with the tools that you've developed and the team that you've put in place to enhance FFANY's offering, enhance the benefits that FFANY membership and FDRA membership means to the member companies, and really do better work in terms of coordinating these touch points for the industry to come together.
Yeah, I like how you said, the original mission of FFANY when it was founded was to bring together like-minded companies, not necessarily to be in the shoe business or the shoe show business, I should say. And that's exactly what our mandate is as an organization. And I think why it will work and the reason that it will work is that you are pivoting back to your original mandate, right? And so as you do that, it lines up with us as well, and it gives us the opportunity. I've said a number of times to people who've reacted, and by the way, most overwhelmingly, it's been very positive. There have been folks talking about, the time commitment with running a shoe show. And I've been telling people we're not actually getting in the shoe show business. We're going to help the industry manage its own market week. And that may seem like semantics to people, but from a day-to-day operational perspective, it actually is not. And from a contractual perspective, as you learned with the Hilton, is not. So I'm very encouraged by it. And I think it will slot in nicely because at the end of the day, we always have a presence at New York Market Week. We've always partnered with FFANY. We've always seen the benefits of coming together in person as an industry. 2 of our board meetings are typically sometime around the FFANY shows. We're at every event. We co-sponsor events with you. So for us, it's a no-brainer in the sense that you've righted the ship, you've created synergies, and you've made it very conducive to pivot towards us so that we can kind of welcome the FFANY brands who aren't FDRA members into the fold. We can create those efficiencies while at the same time we are highly committed to New York Market Week and whatever that looks like as it evolves. But you know what? That will be decided by the industry because we are a nonprofit industry supported organization. We don't have shareholders. We don't have corporate conglomerates managing what kind of money we pull out of these events. And I think the industry will speak through us and make the wisest decision as to how Market Week looks in the future. And we'll help facilitate that conversation. So I'm extremely excited about it. And I'm so grateful for the work you've done, John, and look forward to our continued work together because as Andy started this program, as we kind of pull it back before we head to Jasmine, there's reason to be optimistic. There's reason to think through, in spite of all the pain and the pain points that we've been feeling, that creates opportunities for us to reconfigure and reassess and then set a new path forward. And I'm optimistic about that path.
Yeah, and look, the interesting thing about it is there was an element of competitiveness over the years, and again, I'm not sure if there wasn't a ton of competitiveness between the FDRA and FFANY, but competitiveness between the charitable organizations or competitiveness against who got credit for different events. And that is really driven when there was money to be made in trade shows and who got credit for trade shows, who got credit for, or who controlled different things, drove a lot of that competitiveness. Now, times have changed. There's not that level of, what's the right word, but there's not that bounty at the end. And so the one thing I've been super encouraged with is yourself, myself, Sean Osborne at 210, Michael Atmore, the conversations that we've had about all getting in a bunker together saying, hey, let's check our egos at the door and what's the best thing for the industry and let's move forward in that direction. Again, I don't know that happens under normal circumstances. And so there are some silver linings to everything that's going on. And that I think is one of them. So I'm excited about it. And I look forward to working real closely with you guys.
Yeah, we do too. It's going to be fun. It's going to be very exciting.
Absolutely. I can't wait for the holograms and the robots and digital screens everywhere with max headroom.
Don't forget
talking about shoo.
Jetpacks where you can go from one showroom to the next in New York. It's going to be awesome.
Beat me up, Scotty. I've got all my shoes.
Take me to 1370.
I'm giving her all she's got, Captain. I can't give her any more. You got too many shoes in your satchel.
Oh my God!
Oh man!
I'm dark on this interview, guys.
Someone said they wanted some life, so I'm bringing it to them straight to your home, just like we always do. All right, John, as always, thanks so much for joining us. Thanks so much for your leadership with FFANY over the last several years and really, making sure that you made the right decisions for the industry, really. And we look forward to the partnership in the future. Folks, you're listening to Shoe and Show. This is the Footwear Industry's podcast. You can find us on every single major audio platform from iTunes to Spotify. You can find us on shoeandshow.com, where you can see our entire catalog of over 200 episodes interviewing all the major footwear leaders, grabbing all their tips and best practices that you can use to help make your business better and make better decisions in your position and at your company. If you have an idea for guests that you would like us to have come on or topics you'd like us to discuss, go to shoeandshow.com. There is a button on the bottom left. It's a voice note. You can click on that and leave us a voice message. And the coolest voice message, we will air it on our next episode, and we'll share that and we'll discuss those topics for you. If I'm missing anything else, Matt, I think maybe as we look forward to this partnership, do you have any kind of key dates that folks can look forward to later in the year?
Yeah, for us, we are focused on bringing it together by the end of FFANY's fiscal year. It'll be September 30th. This is obviously pending 2 board votes, but I'm optimistic about it. And we've already done a ton of due diligence on our side and on John's side. So beyond that, John, FFANY Market Week, August. Is there anything you want to say as it relates to that first week in August when we typically gather?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, New York is obviously the center of the pandemic in the U.S. and we don't think it's going to be ready to open or welcome business visitors. Let alone do we think that our industry is going to be ready to send buyers. I've talked to plenty of the major retailers in America, and they're not ready to send buyers in person. That said, we're doing a virtual Market Week, with the help of FDRA and 210, and it's being led by Footwear News. So it's the 4th and 5th of August. We're working on it now, and we're really focused on the fact that, hey, highlighting what's going on in New York, highlighting what's going on with major companies in our business, because a lot of our showrooms will be open, and those showrooms will be used as the backdrop to present people with their spring 2021 lines. It's just going to be a different Market Week because there won't be as much in-person. There won't be as much in-person meeting. But August 3rd, 4th, 5th is the dates that we're targeting to come together virtually as an industry.
Awesome. So you got the dates there, and also obviously you can Google FFANY or Google FDRA, and those dates will be posted on our websites as well. So with that, I'm going to take it home, folks. John, thanks again for joining us. And on behalf of Matt, myself, and Jasmine, we hope everybody out there stays safe, keeps buying shoes, and until next time, Shoe In is out.
Shoe In has been brought to you by the FDRA, the Footwear Industries Association focused on retail, trade, politics, and fashion, helping create and enhance conversations on all things footwear. For information about FDRA, visit fdra.org.